philosophy that dominates today's intellectuals is far worse than Marxism. It has no positive goals. Its main thrust is destruction and tearing stuff down and putting people down and basically destroying. There's no utopia. There's no goal that we're heading towards. There's no some wonderful place. There's no recognition of the values that capitalism created, which Marx had. Marx wrote some of the best defenses of capitalism as an economic system and said, but it plays itself out, and what will replace it is socialism. But he has a whole thing about how, yes, only capitalism brings people out of poverty. Capitalism was inevitable as the thing that replaces feudalism. CRT, all these things are basically built on hate, not on anything more than that. And it is, we talked earlier about morality. So I think CRT, certainly intersectionality, are the culmination of a perverse morality. If you think about Christian morality, then Christian morality is about, at its core, it's about the need to sacrifice for others. The highest moral action that you can commit, the one that will make you a saint, is to die or to achieve extreme poverty or to suffer some horrible outcome while serving other people. Your purpose in life is to live for others. Take Mother Teresa, take every saint in every museum in a painting, arrows sticking through them. They're all about dying in the service of other people. Which other people? What's the standard by which we should determine whether you should sacrifice for them or not? Well, how oppressed are they? How poor are they? How miserable are they? How suffering are they? The more suffering, the more you should sacrifice to them. Now, what does intersectionality do? Well, it creates a pyramid of suffering. It ranks us based on how oppressed supposedly we are. And then it demands from everybody at the upper regions of the pyramid to sacrifice for people at the other regions of this pyramid, right? And of course, it blames us. It has original sin. That's another thing that intersectionality takes from Christianity. We're all sinners, particularly if you're born with white skin. I guess, I'm Jewish, so I have a little bit of an intersectionality score. I get some credit because Jews are being oppressed.
Right. But
basically, the whole idea is the more seemingly oppressed you are, the more miserable you are, the more you failed, the more poor you are, the more suffering you are, the more virtuous you are, the more you deserve my sacrifice. And the more successful I am, the more sinful I must have been, the more of an oppressor I obviously am.
If you're the wrong color, though, right? Because if you're a Black, transsexual, non-able-bodied, and you're worth $1 billion, then you're still okay. It doesn't matter how successful you are.
Well, you're somewhat okay, right? You're not quite as okay as if you are Black, transsexual. What did you call it?
Non-able-bodied, yeah.
Non-able-bodied, and you're poor. Yeah. Then you're definitely more okay on its intersectionality criteria. So intersectionality does have a wealth parameter, but like Marx, but it doesn't have that isn't the dominant parameter. So what we have today is altruism taken to the extreme. Altruism is the philosophical term coined by Auguste Comte, the French philosopher. It is about the purpose of life is to live for the sake of others. And the more miserable the other is, the more you owe them, the more successful you are, the more you should be put down. It is a combination of that with racism, the identification of people based on the color of their skin and on their race, with a heavy dose of nihilism. And that is basically nihilism. What characterizes nihilism is hatred of success, hatred of good, hatred of the world, really, hatred of life, and a desire to see everything good in the world destroyed. So when you combine all those, what you get is the modern left. And I would argue a little bit of the modern right as well. So I don't want to come across as just anti-left, because I have a lot of criticism of the right as well.
I want to explore that in a second, but I'm so glad that you mentioned that you almost sympathize more with pure Marxism than the CRT stuff, because I made this argument to a friend of mine, a left-wing friend of mine, and I was like, I can't even believe I'm saying this, because as we just spoke about, communism is one of the most evil philosophies ever implemented and promulgated among humanity, and it's responsible for tens of millions of deaths. And I was saying, I actually have more sympathy for the Chinese CCP, who basically, as evil as they are, and I don't want to whitewash anything like that, but they have an end goal in mind. They want what's best for China and the Han Chinese people, and they do want to incorporate everyone into this culture. And with the CRT postmodern stuff, it's like, well, no, if you're born a certain way, you have no chance. It's not even going to work out for you. At least with pure economic philosophy like Marxism, you can always come on board.
Well,
with this, you're irredeemable.
Real Marxism is irredeemable as well, because real Marxism, right, you're born into a class. You have no free will. You're determined. History is determined. You're determined. Indeed, what Marx doesn't tell you, but is obvious, is that in order to achieve his utopia, anybody born a bourgeoisie will have to be killed, because you can't change. It's not like you could change, or you have to go to re-education camps. Right. So look, I don't want to whitewash anything about communism. It's evil through and through. There's only one thing more evil than communism. That is modern nihilistic egalitarianism. Mm-hmm. And egalitarianism is the idea that we should all be equal in outcome. Even the Marxists didn't pretend that was possible. So, the best example of egalitarianism and the ultimate place to which CRT and all these other intersectionality and the rest of them are going is what the Khmer Rouge did in Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge in Cambodia were less communist than they were committed egalitarians. What they wanted is equality of outcome. They didn't care about means of production, all of that. That didn't matter. They just wanted everybody to be equal. So if you had an education and somebody else didn't have an education, how do we make you equal? Well, we can't. So we kill everybody who has an education. If you're smarter than everybody else, how do we make you equal? Well, we can't. So we just kill everybody who's smart. If you're a hard worker and everybody else is lazy, how do we make you equal? Well, we kill everybody who's a hard worker. The Khmer Rouge killed 40% of their own population, 2 million, 5 million people in Cambodia, all in the name of equality, of outcome, or to use a modern phrase, which I think is distorted, but a modern phrase, all in the name of equity. They killed 40% of their own people in the name of equity, in the name of equality of outcome, in the name of equity, the way the left today uses it. And nobody cares. Why not look at what equality of outcome actually leads to? It leads to death and destruction. Nothing else. No good comes of it. This is not about leveling the playing field, which I don't think you can. This is about equality of outcome. And equality of outcome, only death can result of that. And that's why the modern egalitarians are much worse even than communists. And that's saying a lot, because communism is about the lowest you can get in life.
That is saying something. And I remember reading a passage about the Khmer Rouge. They even killed people with glasses because yes, they were assigned to being of the intellectual class.
Yeah, you could read. Yeah. Usually glasses meant you could read, or you went to school, or you studied or something. They killed anybody with glasses was shot. This is the killing fields of Cambodia. You can read about it.
Interestingly, basically never taught about in schools. I never even learned about it until long past I was done with school. I learned a lot about Marx in college. I probably had, I don't know, 7 classes that approached Marxism and his theories, but never about that kind of stuff. I want to talk to you about getting into the whole woke capitalism stuff and what your view on that is. So basically, and I saw you discuss it in one of your previous podcasts about, I think Blackrock is kind of one of the most emblematic institutions about this. So Blackrock, basically, even Bloomberg called them the 4th branch of government. So they are the largest asset manager in the world, I think 7 trillion in assets. They are the principal shareholder of, hundreds, thousands of companies, a significant portion of the S&P 500. They were even put in charge of the response to the most recent pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic. And they are pushing this whole ESG thing, environmental, social governance, basically almost compelling these other private companies to be what they call stakeholders, rather than pursue profits, rather than being shareholder focused. And because they're an enormous wealth, they're enormous power, they're the largest shareholder in so many companies. They're the fourth branch of government, as Bloomberg said. They get lent money at a much less interest rate than any of us can get, and they can do all sorts of things with that. So how do we make sense of this? And obviously we can go into like the whole Disney and Nike and all these institutions pushing this sort of woke agenda. What can we do from a policy standpoint, if anything? How do you make sense of that?
Well, it's not clear that you can do much of a policy perspective. I think the best thing you can do with a policy perspective is shrink the size of government. Remember, Blackrock is as big as it is, not because it has competed in a capitalist market and been the winner and grown this big. It is this big because it is politically connected. The reason it's so big is that it manages many of the pension plans of public employees. Public employees shouldn't have pension plans. They should have 401ks like the rest of the private sector, And the problem with these pension plans is that they're politically motivated. That is, take the CalPERS, which is the pension plan of state workers in California. On the board that decides the investment policies of CalPERS sits the governor of the state of California. It is a political entity. It is not a financial entity. And as a consequence, politics and finance now intersect. And as government grows, more employees have bigger and bigger pensions. Their role in putting pressure on these companies grows, and you get woke capitalism. It's a political agenda circumventing politics, going around politics. Now, if I had my money managed by Blackrock, which luckily I don't, but if I had it, I would sue them. And I think people should sue them. This is how you fix this problem. I would sue them because their job is not to promote a social agenda. Their job is to make me as much money as they can. That's why I hired them. That's why they're managing my money, right? They're fiduciaries. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the people who have invested in their 401ks to maximize their wealth, not pursue some social agenda. I think shareholders should sue Disney. I think shareholders should sue Exxon. I think shareholders should sue all these companies under the guise that management is no longer exercising its fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. And instead, I think shareholders should organize and try to replace the board, try to fire the CEO. That's the only way to fight this. If you fight it through government, you are going to give government way too much power that will be used against capitalism ultimately. So, don't go using government in order to solve your problem. Solve it through the marketplace, and we have a court system for that, and we can fire CEOs. It's actually doable. And BlackRock we should organize to fire the CEO of BlackRock. And this we have to do as investors. We should sue them.